quality controls and continuous improvement.
Okay, and some of those quality controls and continuous improvement might be, and I'm just really sort of thinking outside of the box here, just trying to throw things out there, and you tell me, no, that's not going to be it, or it might be that, or so forth. It might be, for instance, that as they develop in their roles, one of the challenges they face is around performance management in terms of receiving feedback and so forth, because it's almost like another form of interview and so on. Do you envision perhaps applying some continuous improvement to those kinds of talent processes in order to make sure that the program is sustainable and they are retained and they are developed and opportunities do come their way? It's a tough question to answer, I know, but I'm just trying to get a sense for all the different places where you might be thinking about already leaning in because you expect maybe there might be a challenge, or I'm just open-ended.
It's the whole area of career progression and continuous improvement and so on. Ultimately, there are organizations within the organization that handle those things.
Great.
Right. The question is, are they equipped to handle this for a neurodiverse population? So we are, I think the difference between the Autism Aware program and those teams is that we probably have a year or 2 years more of experience in doing some of these things, and we're going through the discovery phases typically ahead of them, right? So what we do is we consolidate our learnings and we try to put together the artifacts that the run maintain folks, in this case, hope people that can provide advice on performance evaluations and so on, have enough tools to be able to provide the right advice. Okay. So yes, at some point, I think that we'll probably fill a lot of those gaps that we are able to find. And then once everybody knows that there's category 1, category 3, 4, 5, 10, 11, 15, right, of areas where we do things slightly different, then I think that each one of those categories of things, for example, performance evaluations being one of them, will have its own performance improvement cycle as well, until you get to a point where you have increments of improvement of 1% or whatever, and you have gotten there. Okay. Mm-hmm. But hopefully, the idea is that 80% or something like that of the capability will be at some point absorbed by those run maintain organizations.
Fantastic. Well, you actually said a magic word, and I was going to ask you about it later in the conversation, but since you used it, I will latch onto it. You used the word artifacts, and in our research process, one of the things that we like to do, because we realize that in presenting stories or narratives like this about how a company has tackled a major issue successfully, it actually helps people who want to learn from that practice to see some of the artifacts that were used. I'll ask you the question directly. Would you be willing to share some of those artifacts with us, some of the conversation guides, for instance? And we can anonymize a lot of the material, of course. We don't have to use real names, or even we can play around with the language and what have you. But would you be willing to share with us the structure of those artifacts so that we can show people, well, this is what they mean by an interview guide, and this is what they mean by the pre-employment training around this skill or this capability and so forth. And like I said, I mean, we can anonymize it.
If some of those things, excuse me, are things that you feel are going to be used for internal purposes, and then the outcome will be, anonymized, I think that we can make some of these things available to you. Okay.
Wonderful. Yeah. But by the way, I want to make sure we don't share anything externally unless you approve it, right? And so we show you our finished product and we have you approve it.
Okay.
And so you'll get an opportunity to look over all the language in the case study, the examples, the structure of it, and give a thumbs up or a thumbs down on anything. And you only share with us, 100% what you're comfortable sharing.
Okay.
Yeah. That's more or less our process.
Yeah, I think that we may have some things that we can share with you. Let me. I was going to show you something, since we are here in a Zoom, that I might be able to show you, just to get an idea from you if this is what you're thinking about. So let me go ahead and see if I can find the Zoom here, and
you can share your screen when you're ready.
Share my screen here at the bottom. Okay. So, for example, we'll have this, for example, this is a mini training of half an hour that we do in order to have a conversation with managers. So, for example, when somebody's going to have what we call a prearranged facilitated interview, we say, okay, here's the swim lane of the manager, the swim lane of the Smart Work facilitator, and the HR VP, right? And so we start with a session, which is an Smart Work introduction of 30 minutes, and then we move on to a second section, or session, another 30 minutes, which is an interviewing a person with autism. This doesn't mean that they learn everything that is to be known about the interviews right away. We follow with the accommodations. It's kind of a little process that we do to set up an interview, okay?
That's brilliant. That's brilliant.
So what we do is then we teach people about, what are the different roles of people, the contributors, the considerations. We go over what are the roles in an interview. There's the coordination, the supporter of the interview, the Smart Work lead, and one or more interviewers. We talk about preferences and accommodations, right? Inclusion, why we need to include an interview facilitator, communicating the interview process, schedule, and people participating in an interview. Then we talk about sharing interview questions ahead of time in advance with the interviewee, if at all possible. Okay. Determining if an alternate interview location or communication medium is needed. Some people, for example, excel at walking interviews. Their sensory system works better that way. They're going to tell you a lot more about themselves if they're walking. Okay. Or maybe we try to sit under a shade in outside, or maybe we go to a cafeteria. So those are determinations that we make ahead of time. Locations, transportation needs, names of interviewees and the role, sequence of the interviews. All of this has to be communicated ahead of time to the person being interviewed, because certainty is the number one thing for people in the spectrum, right? Not deviation. Yeah. So we provide as much information ahead of time. And then what we do in this area, for example, we have what we call an interview template, right? And we will ask the teams to fill out an interview agenda where they have to talk about logistics, technology, and materials they use, accommodation, interview, and participants. And we have here, for example, different sections that they have to. It's not too onerous. It's just a page or a page and a half. And then we have to have the interview process here. Okay. Yeah. What's going to happen when how many minutes are going to be occupied in this or that topic, right? In addition to this, we also have what we call an interview guide for managers. It's a 10-page document for those that want to go a little bit deeper, okay? And they can read a 10-page document that talks about all of the details of what can happen, what they can expect during the interview. Is that more or less what you're looking for?
This is exactly what we're looking for, because one, it will really give us more detail that, if we were to get it in a conversation with you, it would take us 3-hour interview. It would be very helpful to see those documents and to have those. But it's also very good to sort of put them in our teaching case study materials, because I want to be clear about what we're trying to do at Mercer. When we share what a company like SAP is doing in this field, we want to share it in as unbiased a manner as possible, right? Because frankly, I'm not trying to sell anything when I teach this case to people. I'm simply trying to say, here's a smart company full of really good leaders who are discovering something that maybe you, in whatever other company I'm talking to at the time, you haven't thought about. So don't take it from me, take it from them. They are the experts at this, I'm not. And so to the extent that I can have a real example from SAP in the document that's structured in a way that you've actually used, it's actually a much more powerful teaching tool than if I make it up myself. Mm-hmm. And, I can guess what it looks like. I can spend some time doing some research and finding out. But if I can literally say, this is what the leaders at SAP have done, it's just a better way to teach the point. And it's a powerful tool.
Who is your audience for these cases?
Yeah, so it would be groups of